it's a weird feeling when, it is amazing. But being an athlete your whole life, I feel like it's always been like, okay, I did this, but it wasn't the best. So like, what's next? Like, I can still do better. So, and it does feel good after everything. And like, I did make huge improvements, but I know there's still so much left. And so I can't help but kind of focus on that.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is one of America's most prominent CrossFit athletes, recently finishing 4th at the 2022 Noble CrossFit Games. She's known for bringing a vibe and a ton of energy, none other than Danielle Brandon. Welcome to the show, Danielle. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I feel like you've been through a lot and you've kind of always been in the CrossFit media attention. And so for us to authentically be able to connect with you and kind of share your story today is such an honor. So thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you. Of course. Yeah.
What's also really cool is I briefly mentioned it to you offline is I've connected with so many people within your world. And one of those people being Cooper Marsh. And, he's kind of the guy behind the curtain over at Lab Management. What's it been like kind of working with Cooper a little bit within your CrossFit journey?
Oh my gosh. Cooper. So I met him. I actually don't think I met him for a while after I started working with him. So I started working with him and had never met him. And I don't even remember like the first time we met. That's so bad. I feel like I've known Cooper for so long, and I really have only known him since like 2019. But he's like I credit all of my success to him, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without him. And he's literally just like a bigger brother to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's so cool. I mean, I've chatted with him just a few times. We rub elbows and kind of cross paths at different events. But same thing. I feel like I've known him for a while. And I feel like he entered the space at such a prime time where, you have these CrossFit athletes that are performing at such a high level. You guys are professionals. You're training multiple times within a day, trying to do all the things both on the field of play and off the field of play to like get your body, your mind, your spirit, your emotions kind of in alignment. But then the business side of things starts to get so messy, especially when you have to do it on your own. And he's done a cool job like organizing that for you and a few other athletes. What's that business side of things kind of been like for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, after last year, I think a lot of, sponsors and stuff like that really took off. And even before that, in 2019, it's kind of like this whole world that you don't really know about. Like I knew nothing about what Cooper did or anything about how CrossFitters made a living. So I remember right after the games in 2019, he reached out and was like, hey, explained kind of what he did. And I was like, yeah, but no thanks. Like, I don't need your help. And then I had companies start reaching out and literally being like, what do you want, Danielle? Like, how can we help you? How much money do you want? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm allowed to ask for, how any of this works. So I think Jason then reached out to me and was like, hey, again, this is what we do. You need our help. And I was like, yeah, I need your help. And
he's the founder of X Endurance, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
And so then I started working with them. But yeah, this past year and last year, a lot more sponsors started popping off. And so, Cooper does his job really well. And it's been really cool to kind of create a brand, and Cooper's helped a lot in that. So
totally. And you've brought on a lot of media attention yourself, and most notably because of your performances. You briefly mentioned 2019, but all top 15 finishes for you, which is very impressive, right? Like this is a sport where the body takes a toll, the mind takes a toll. There's a lot that goes into it. And there's not always the huge return on investment. And so the fact that you've been able to stay consistent these last 4 years, and then most notably finishing in the top 5, like that's incredibly impressive, Danielle.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh.
Hopefully in our conversation today, we can untangle some of the messiness that leads to you sharing your secrets with the world so that they can try to follow in your footsteps a little bit.
Oh, yeah. They can try.
For sure. Looking back on your journey so far, I was very fortunate to kind of spend some time chatting with your former training partners, Bethany Shadburn and Carrie Pierce. And Carrie actually came out to San Diego maybe like a month ago or so, and we got to train a little bit. And she's such a sweetheart. And I've actually connected a little bit with Bethany Shadburn's fiance, Randy Flores. I've had him on the podcast as well. Super smart dude and a strength coach for the Lakers. What was it like, as you guys kind of got together and you had this trio really synergizing off one another? We were just kind of coming off the pandemic. You guys decided to come together there in Vegas, and I can't help but relate this to, before Invictus, I was up at Valley CrossFit. So I was around the Valley girls. And that was Chris Clever, that was Lindsay Valenzuela, that was Rebecca Voigt and Katie Hogan, and just that synergy there. And then all of a sudden I saw you guys kind of recreating something cool, and I'm like, the Vegas girls. All right, maybe there's something, right? Maybe there's something to this. What was it like kind of getting together with those guys? Such high level athletes. I mean, Carrie's finished third. What was that like for you, Danielle?
I feel like I didn't put myself on the same level as them. So it was like very crazy for me to come in and train with Carrie and Bethany, who I saw were like here, right? Like, and I was like maybe down here fitness wise and like experience wise, even though I guess I had competed in 2019 and 2020, but that was a rookie year and then an online year. I feel that whole year of training was interesting because I don't think I ever gave myself enough credit for like how fit I was or how good I could be. So I was constantly just kind of like following under them and, just kind of hiding behind them a lot in training. But it worked out well. We all were very different. We're all from very different backgrounds as far as like how we grew up and personalities. Even kind of the way we like to train was very different, but it did work well. And for the time that it was just us three, I really enjoyed it. And I got to learn a lot from them. And even when they left, as sad as it was, I think for me personally, it was like meant to happen that way. Because when they left, it forced me to kind of shape up and like be my own kind of. Like, I feel like I went in there and kind of, like I said, hid behind them. But when they left, I was forced to like be like, okay, who is Danielle Brandon? And like, who is she as a trainer and like as a competitor? So it was cool.
That's really cool. It's almost like a younger sibling relationship where it's like you look up to the older siblings and eventually they move on.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of step into your own. And it sounds like that was a little bit of like a retrospective experience for you where you started to question like, who am I? What do I want? Where can I go in this sport? And what were some of those answers that kind of came? And what were some of the strategies that you used to find those answers? Like, was it thinking during training? Was it journaling? Was it tough conversations with people within your circle? How did you kind of dig within yourself and ultimately learn to spread your wings a little bit in the sport?
So it was actually probably at the 2021 CrossFit Games. Carrie, Bethany, and I got to compete at West Coast, and it's so nice competing with teammates because it's such an emotional roller coaster. But when you have your training partners, and they were girls, so they were my direct competitors, and we were always together, it was like super helpful. I mean, I'd have a breakdown after an event and Bethany would be there to like pick me back up. And so at the 2021 games, when they were no longer there with me, I was like, oh, fuck, like, how do I do this alone? And I just remember during the games, I hated that experience. I felt really alone and I didn't feel prepared. And so after that, I just remember like, I never want to feel that unprepared again. And I never want to feel like I have to like rely on anyone else or not be able to rely on my fitness and training even. And so I don't know, it just kind of came down to whether or not like I wanted it and then being tough. Like, I feel like I was just really weak-minded. And in the middle of workouts, I made a lot of excuses for myself, like stupid stuff. Like, why does this hurt? This shouldn't be hurting. And it's like, no, actually it hurts for everyone. Like, that's part of CrossFit. You just have to love to hurt and you have to love the suck. And I honestly didn't until this past year. So it's not like, I feel like that's like a crazy thing that people look at these elite CrossFitters and they're like, oh, they all just like love to suck. And I'm like, well, I actually didn't at first. It was something I had to like learn to love. So I feel like for anyone out there, it shouldn't be discouraging if you don't necessarily like to suck, because I had to learn to love to suck, if that makes sense.
No, I think you verbalized it very well, and I appreciate the very honest response, because sometimes the perception from like a recreational athlete viewing some of these really high-level CrossFit Games athletes is, oh, must be nice that they can train all day, or oh, must be nice that they have these God-given skills. And it's like, okay, maybe there's some of that, but on the other side of must be nice is, hey, I wake up really early and I go straight to the gym. Sometimes I'm not hungry and I eat anyway because I need the fuel. You know, sometimes I just want to have a drink with my friends and I can't really do that because it's going to punish me in training tomorrow. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that, not to mention, you know, the body aches and pains, the consistently working on things that you don't necessarily want to do around, you know, certain tweaks, or, you know, maybe your hands are beat up and you got to, you know, lift a heavy bar or do some gymnastics that day. There's a lot of intangibles that are gentle peeks behind the curtain that the viewer doesn't necessarily see.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Trident Coffee is sponsoring this episode of the Invictus Mindset Podcast. My guys over at Trident taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good and bad, and everything in between. At Trident, they're storytellers. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They help create connections through symbology and storytelling that engage their customers on an emotional level, and this distinguishes them from other coffee brands. You can find Trident in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. They offer over 14 plus nitro cold brews along with dairy-free options. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from their keto bakery. All of these options will allow you to support your health and fitness journey with Trident Coffee. They're more than just a coffee company. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Once again, that's tridentcoffee.com. Use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Take your coffee experience to the next level. Two important factors for us over at Invictus Mindset are true care and attention to detail. My friends over at RX Smart Gear have been bringing innovative fitness tools to the market since 2009. From their award-winning Evo speed ropes to their amazing gymnastics grips to their line of inflatable fitness equipment, they're constantly looking to problem solve within the fitness industry. They're always allowing us to have our gear work for us rather than against us. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use discount code Invictus Mindset to shop their latest cutting edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. I think all of us were kind of walking on eggshells, like, what's right? What's wrong with this COVID thing? Like, you know, what are the rules? Why do I have to be isolated in my own lane? You know, is this political? Is it, you know, my body, my choice? I don't really know, right? Like, and all of us are kind of trying to figure this out. But at the core root of it, and this is something I try to preach a lot on the podcast, is we're just trying to be more human. And, you know, with Bethany coming down with COVID and not being able to compete, you were isolated, right? And you went through this really challenging experience where you didn't really get to interact with your direct competitors. You know, I only got to see what was on the competition floor, and it was, I mean, it's so brave and so courageous of you to still get after it and give your absolute best effort, despite having to mask up before and after events and so many challenges. Like, how did you navigate that? And what was kind of brewing in between your ears as you were like, okay, like these are the cards that are dealt. How do I play my best cards?
So I think that was one of the biggest things is I was like I didn't feel prepared for that games. And to be put in that position, I was like, oh shit, like I'm really not prepared. Even with little things like warm-ups, cool downs, how to approach workouts, that was something that I didn't really work a lot on. And so I honestly, I feel like I didn't capitalize on the 2021 games as best as I could have. There'd be workouts where I was like, I'm miserable right now. And I was not mentally tough. And I was like, I'm not going to warm up. I was so sick of it. And I was just like, okay, I'm not warming up. Like the Echo Bike Snatch one. It's like, not warming up for this. Justin, you can't tell me anything. I'm walking out onto the floor and I don't care what happens. And it showed. I got almost dead last in that workout. I was just so mentally weak that year. It was just highs and lows, right? I'd be like, okay, I can do this. And then the next I'd be like, I can't do this. And you don't realize how much human interaction really helps. I do my best when I'm having fun, and I do my best when I get to, shit talk with my competitors and make jokes and have fun. And I didn't get to do any of that. And so I was just like, what's the point right now? I didn't see the point in competing because I just wasn't having fun. And yeah, but it is crazy because in 2021, random note, that workout, the Echo Bike Snatch one, I got 28th, I think. And then I did it in training months ago, and I would have gotten 4th. I would have got 4th or 5th because I warmed up. I had a game plan, just little things like that would have made a huge difference. I mean, a 28th to a 4th, 5th place finish is insane.
Yeah, that's huge, especially at how the games are kind of structured with the points and whatnot. Fighting for points, as Justin Medeiros likes to say.
Yeah, seriously. And so just learning little stuff like that. It was a crazy experience.
And you made it through to the other side, right? You didn't quit on yourself. They now serve as data points to help you improve. You're now, able to kind of separate a little bit from the emotional versus the logical, right? I don't feel like warming up, but it's the right thing to do. And I'm a pro, and, I'm going to do the next pro thing so I can continue to improve and evolve.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to beat a dead horse because I know you've discussed this a lot, so we don't have to go too deep here, but part of being a pro is, okay, this coaching relationship with underdogs and Justin Cutler wasn't working anymore. And, you had a few options. You're trying to weigh and measure where's the best vibe? Where can I maximize my potential, especially given, roughly a month, before the games at the time. You decided to take the leap out to Naples, Florida, and coach and get coached by Matt Torres, we've had both him and Cutler on the podcast and kind of picked their brains a little bit. Both great conversations. Mm-hmm. What was that pro experience like for you? Obviously a little bit of emotional, right? It is a relationship that you end and you move on. But there was so much banter from the media and so much speculation that you had to untangle, which is part of, being in the limelight as you are. What was that experience like for you professionally and personally?
Oh man. Yeah. So it was a relationship that ended, and I was really sad about it. But I think initially it was easy for me to kind of be mad about it just because of things that did happen. And so me leaving, I knew was the best choice. And I knew it was a great place in Naples with Matt Torres and to train with Dallin Pepper. And so it's pretty easy to make that decision and to go train there. And training there I was really happy. I was genuinely enjoying training, and it was taking up so much of my day that I didn't necessarily have a ton of time to, think about being sad and other life that was going on. I was able to kind of just focus on the CrossFit Games, which I just felt super lucky to be able to do, because I easily could have been super distracted with being, caught up and emotional. And that's not to say I did not go through those. I think there are a couple days that stood out where I was like, dang, I'm just really sad because I feel like I kind of got betrayed by somebody who I thought really loved me. And, but ultimately I was able to focus a lot on training, and Matt Torres brings a whole different level of coaching that I did not know existed out there. I think mine and Justin's relationship with coaching, and even just our relationship, I don't know. I feel like it just kind of like got a little lost in what we both needed from each other, from like as an athlete to coach. Because going to Torres, it's like very clear what I like to have as an athlete now. And I don't know if that's just because I didn't know like the different styles of coaching in CrossFit, but with Torres, like I just like do really well with it. And I never would have known that without having had what happened at Underdogs. So I no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting to see how things play out. And I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And, I think it's interesting, within any coaching relationship, you're striving to figure out like what buttons do you press to try to maximize the potential of the athlete? How far is too far? How much is not enough? Where's that sweet spot in the messy middle where we can optimize like a flow state and still keep it fun? It's such a unique ratio or dosage that you're kind of playing with the push and the pull consistently. And, it's cool that you got it right with Matt Torres. And, when he and I talked, something that really stood out to me was he coaches the human first. And I love that. In my role at Invictus, I'm able to do kind of private coaching for a lot of our members and certain military personnel. And it's like I could go into that with, hey, I have this template. I want to fit, this athlete into my template. But then in reality, it's like, well, maybe they had some sort of physical training in the morning where they did a ton of running. Well, maybe I shouldn't run them when I see them. Or maybe they tweaked their knee doing some sort of military PT. Probably shouldn't squat them in that moment. So now I got to critically think and customize something to meet them where they're at. And Matt really described it that way. And, that's kind of the approach we play with and tinker with at Invictus. What does that mean to you, that he really meets you where you're at? He coaches the human first. And then he has more of a customized approach specific to your strengths and weaknesses.
Well, I mean, I think that approach is, growing up and doing like gymnastics and track and field in college, like, I mean, more so not even gymnastics, I would say like swimming and diving and track and field. That's like, I've had really good coaches in those sports where they do the same thing, right? Like if you are hurt or injured and, you like need to tweak training and programming, like that's what coaches are there to do. And like, I feel like a lot of coaches take on this style of like, just push your athletes as hard as you can and like wreck them. And, but it's like, you're playing with a very fine line, especially in CrossFit, because we are maximizing our potential in like every aspect. Like we're trying to be the fittest freaking humans, which in gymnastics, you're not necessarily trying to do that. Or in track and field, it's just so different. Like, I don't know, you can't get away with as much in CrossFit as you could being like a track and field athlete. You just can't.
Yeah, you're a specialist in those sports for sure. And you're not expected to be good at everything.
Yeah, like it's just so different. But I think what Torres is doing is really cool. And I think it's more cool to see how he does it with Dallin and the younger athletes, because I am like one of the older ones. So, I've already kind of been through sports and like been shaped a lot through my upbringing. Whereas like Dallin and Emma, like they're still so young. And I learned some of my best lessons in gymnastics and track and field and in college sports. And like, this is their kind of like college sport, right? Like CrossFit is their life. So they still have so much to learn and as far as like their values and, learning like responsibility and integrity and all of those things. So I think it's more cool to watch Torres do that with these athletes. And I think it is cool kind of navigating like how me and him work as coach and athlete, just because I am older and I am a little more, I don't know, maybe seasoned, but, I don't know. It's something I'm really excited to do a lot more of this next year, because we've really only had like a month.
Yeah, for sure. So, I also think it's really cool the way you described that. Like mine and your generation is right on that cusp where it's like we had sport before CrossFit. So like for me, the way I described CrossFit was like it satisfied my crave for competition when basketball was done.
Yes.
And I think in your case, it was like that next thing. And so you already had a ton of tools in your toolbox. So it was really about like skill acquisition, understanding energy systems, and like getting more specific to the sport of CrossFit. And it's just so interesting to see, like, Dallin and Emma have been in the sport since they were like, 13 or 14 years old?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Like longer than me. And I'm like, how? It's crazy.
That's just like, it's such a different and unique perspective, which is really cool just to note, But Danielle, you've briefly mentioned some of your upbringing. What was your upbringing like? What was your family dynamic? And how were you introduced to sport?
So I think, oh my gosh, my upbringing is like all over the place. But
it's what makes you a human.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I was actually raised by my aunt and uncle, and my mom and dad. I never knew my dad. He was an addict, and I never got to meet him, which is fine. And then my mom was actually an addict as well, and she's actually, I want to say, 12 years clean now. So
congratulations.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And
it is cool.
Yeah, so she didn't raise us, but I think I was introduced to gymnastics in fourth grade, because we were like going through, me and my brother. So I have a brother, and he's less than a year apart. We're like Irish twins or something like that, whatever you call it. And yeah, so I was introduced to gymnastics when my life was getting a little bit crazy inside the home, and my grandparents actually recommended it. So I want to say I started in like fourth grade in elementary school, and it was so good for me. I mean, I started to do 2-a-days, and, I was in the gym all the time. So I was kind of out of the home. But yeah, I mean, I did gymnastics for a while and was raised by my aunt and uncle, and that was a crazy ride. And yeah, I mean, gymnastics. And then when I got to high school, I quit gymnastics, was super burnt out, had a lot of life going on inside the home again. And so I was like, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle gymnastics anymore. Mentally, it was just a lot for me. But I'm, as much as I wish I would have like stuck it out, I'm so glad that I kind of stepped away from it, because I was able to do track and field and swimming and diving, and and then track and field, I was able to go to college because of that. I wasn't really looking at college, and I wasn't looking to go because I just didn't know it was possible. But my best friend at the time, she was a year older, and she went to Sacramento State for gymnastics, and she was like, don't be fucking stupid. Like, you're going to college. And so I got to go. I did track and field at the same college that she went to, so I could follow her and have somebody. But yeah.
It's so cool to hear, like, how people navigate the challenges of life, right? Like, you're given some circumstances that aren't necessarily ideal. And, sport helps you navigate those things. It helps you channel your emotions. It explains why you're so good at walking on your hands, and you win almost every handstand walking workout, it seems.
Yeah.
And man, it's also cool. Like, you attack handstand walking workouts. Like, you're not like hesitant when you see the parallel bars. You're like, no, more speed. And it's really, really cool. And obviously, makes sense now that you were doing gymnastics at 4, and it was kind of a place where, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you felt at ease and at home doing gymnastics for a little while, and you could connect and really feel like you had support, versus at the time at home, you didn't feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without gymnastics, I easily would have been getting into way more trouble. So I was really, really lucky. Most kids in my situation, and being brought up how I was brought up, get into drugs. They don't do well in school. But I was just so lucky to have gymnastics to kind of keep me on track. And that's not to say, I mean, when I got to high school and I quit gymnastics, like, I had some rough goings of like figuring out like, oh shit, who am I now? Like, without gymnastics, as most gymnasts experience when they no longer have gymnastics, because it's such a sport where it takes so much time. And I mean, you live, eat, and breathe it. Like that is your identity. And I think, so when I didn't have it anymore, I was like, who am I? Like, you know, what is this? What is life outside of gymnastics? And it was trouble at the time, you know, like, but then luckily I found more sports again, track and field, swimming and diving. So, yeah, I was really, really lucky to have that because, even my brother, like he just didn't take on sports like I did. He, you know, we were both going through a lot and going through the same thing. And I think he had a tougher time because he didn't have sports. And, you know,
Gave you that outlet and that structure.
Yeah, he fell into a lot more trouble than I did. So
very cool. What's so interesting to me, Danielle, is, you know, people know you for your incredible abilities on the competition floor. They know you for, you know, originally the blue hair, then the pink hair. They know you for bringing energy and enthusiasm out there. You know, you're one of the most notable athletes from a media perspective, but I always love pulling the needle out of the haystack. And something that's very unique to me about you is your willingness to ask the difficult questions. And you don't just do it one time. You do it in each chapter as your seasons change. Okay, gymnastics ended. Who am I? What do I want? Where do I want to go? And then you were able to kind of pivot and find track and field. And it sounds like you were able to surround yourself with people that really believed in Danielle Brandon. And they kind of handed you the pen and said, hey, no. Your circumstances in your past don't determine your future and how your book reads. You do, and your choices do. You know, when I say some of these things, have you ever noticed that about yourself? That you love asking challenging questions to yourself, by yourself, and you're not necessarily relying on others to dictate your life for you? It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I think I do, but I'm also, like, I always tell Cooper, I'm like, please, like, if I'm not putting myself in my place, like, please do so. So I
cool.
think I've like noticed that, but like obviously in a very different way, in a more aggressive way, but yeah.
I like that you note the aggressive way, because there's a way and then there's the Danielle Brandon way,
yeah.
which we all saw, you know, on the Buttery Bros episode, which is really cool. Like I was fortunate to connect with those guys, and I spent some time with them out in Madison as well. Heber and Mars are dope. Like they're super cool, and they just capture you guys in your authentic state, and they just make it so fun. Like, you know, what was your connection like with the Buttery Bros, and, you know, what kind of chaos did you put those guys through when they came to visit you?
So the Buttery Bros, they're awesome. And it's really cool to like see their progress. And I feel like, you know, every time I see them, like we're both just like changing and evolving. And like, it's cool to see us like see the growth. And every time I hang out with them, you know, it's better and better because we like get to know each other more. So Naples was really fun. And it was actually funny because that was when nobody really knew I was in Naples. And they had actually texted me and they're like, you won't happen to find yourself in Naples this weekend, will you? And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And they're like, okay, cool. We will be too. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So it was just really fun. And it was even more fun at the MAC, getting to talk with them and hang out with them. Because again, like when you get to know them more, I feel like their videos they get better and better because you feel like you can be more yourself around them and you open up more to them. And it's really cool to get to be able to show Danielle Brandon outside of competing. And it's cool that I think they get to see that too. You know, I think at one point, Marcin was like, he's like, I didn't know you laughed so much. And I was like, yeah, unlike like contrary to popular belief, like I actually am like a big laugh gal, you know, like it's really cool.
That is super cool. I love the messaging that they put out too. Like they have this super energy, you know, act that kind of goes on right at the beginning. But if you read between the lines, like little things like scale for life. I mean, that's so relevant for me now where it's like, you know, I don't need to be doing some of the complexities when I'm, you know, scaling next to our teams and trying to just look good, feel good, play good. And whenever they're in town, it's super fun, you know, to have them around because it's like, I think the CrossFit space has this dichotomy around, oh, if you scale, you're less than. And they make scaling like super cool. And they connect with so many fun people. And the other thing that's really important to note, and I think I said this to you a little bit offline, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. They do the workouts with you. Whether they crush it or it crushes them, they don't care. They have the willingness and the courage to put themselves out there. And with how much videoing they do, with how much content creation, the editing, the travel, they're still jacked. They're still high in enthusiasm.
Right.
And they still hold themselves accountable to like try their best to optimize their whoop score and their recovery to the best of their ability. That's a jack of all trades in my humble opinion. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, it really is. No, it is cool. Even when we were in Naples, I think it was Heber's, his hands were wrecked. Like the worst rips I've probably seen. I mean, they were terrible. And it's so humid there. And we had this workout and had bar muscle ups. And he was trying to do them. But then he was like, this just isn't happening. But he easily could have just been like, I'm not going to do a workout. Like my hands hurt so bad. And he like still did a workout. I think he did overhead squats and like still had to hold on to a bar. But it was cool because he was still so willing to do a workout and his hands were wrecked. But
yep, those dudes are always game. It's really freaking cool. And I want to backtrack just a little bit, Danielle. What was your college track experience like? I think I read that you ran the 4x400, which I did as well. And then I did high jump. I saw that you were a pole vaulter.
Oh, cool.
Which, oh man, that's scary to me. Like going that high and I'm like, no, I don't know. It's impressive though.
Yeah.
What was your college track experience like at Sac State?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I was initially recruited for the 400. And in high school, I did pole vault, but I wasn't very good. And I think I mean, this is like, so it was low, but I had the high school pole vault record or something like that. Cool. But it was like very low and I sucked compared to the collegiate level. And so I was recruited for the 400. And when I first got there, I started just doing kind of track sessions, track sessions with the team. And then they were like, well, you do pole vault too. And at that time they were like, well, we could use you as a pole vaulter. So we'll just like put you in and see if it works out. And if it works out, it'll work out. Right. And so I started doing both. So I was doing pole vault practice, but then I was doing 400. And you probably know how miserable this is. I was doing track sessions alone because like I had to do pole vault practice first while I was fresh. And then I'd have to like end the day with a miserable track session.
That like synergizes so well with CrossFit. It's like the technicality of pole vaulting. That's your Olympic lifting session now.
Yes.
And then you go into this grueling Metcon where you and I both know like the final 150 of a 400 is like, oh, we're doing this today.
Yeah.
And talk about learning to hurt. I mean, it sounds like you've been learning to hurt your entire life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because 400 runners, I feel like they all know the first time they were thrown into a 400. And mine was in high school. And they were like, well, we need somebody for the 4x4. And I just happened to be standing there. And they're like, all right, like, you're going to run it. And I'm like, okay. Like, and everyone's like, ooh, like, that really sucks. And I'm like, what's so bad? Ran it. And they were like, yeah, you're a 400 runner. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, that really? But
that's impressive. The hamstring booty lock on the final 150. You're like, wait, why isn't this working anymore?
And why is there no CrossFit workout that like I've never felt that way in a CrossFit workout. I don't think like I've never felt that booty lock in a CrossFit workout. But yeah, so I was kind of training both or trying to. And then the pole vault coach, crazy. I think it was my freshman year. And he goes, and I remember I was so frustrated because I knew nothing about pole vault. I mean, he was having us do all these drills and I was like, I don't know how to do that. I didn't even know like my steps. I knew nothing about pole vault. And he was like, how do you know nothing? Like, I mean, you're not amazing, but like you don't suck. Like your height isn't terrible. And I was like crying because I was like, why am I even here? And he was like, he pulled me aside and he's like, Danielle, he's like, you're going to get like the school record. He's like, I fully believe that you will. And I was like, you're crazy. And then like, I think that next year I got like I think it was my sophomore year, I got the Sac State's pole vault record, which is crazy.
Wow. Isn't it cool how like, if you have somebody else that believes in you, you start to believe in you too? Like, I don't know, that synergy is really cool to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. But then obviously I kind of like faded away from the 400 just because I was like now the top pole vaulter. So I was more used for like 4x4 and stuff like that, which is fine. I was like totally fine with. The open 4 is I've never been more nervous for anything than the open 400. Like no CrossFit workout makes me feel that way. And I think it's because it's just the same pain every time. And what I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter how fast or slow you come out, it's going to hurt. Like, and I remember our coaches would tell us that all the time. Like, well, do you want a good time or a bad time? Like, if you want a good time, then you have to go out fast because it's going to hurt just as bad if you go out slow. And you're going to be way less happy because you're going to have a bad time. So
yeah, totally. Pick your heart in that moment. I feel like there's a lot of metaphorical analogies that translate to CrossFit. Maybe not necessarily the physical attributes like we described previously, but the mindset around like, learning how to pace, learning how and when to push yourself, understanding, the technical components of certain things. And I don't know, I also think just the willingness to put yourself out there. I think Brooke Wells was a 400-meter runner as well. And so just the track challenges, I think, translate really well to CrossFit. And as you talked about, like really learning how to hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
it's such a skill.
Yeah, it really is. Like learning how to hurt and also like knowing the reward you get. Because like I said, there's some CrossFit workouts where you could start out really easy, but then will you be rewarded with like a good time or a good place? Like versus the person who decides to push in the beginning and it totally depends on the workout, right? But like there's those workouts where you have to go out hot if you want to do good and if you can hang on and if you can embrace that suck. But it's just like how willing are you to suffer? I
love the word that you use, decide, right? Like you make that cognizant decision to, hey, I'm going to enter the arena and go for it.
Absolutely.
And the pain of suffering is always way better than the pain of regret. Looking back, I wish I would have, right? Like how many people are like that sitting on a park bench talking about how good they were in high school versus no, these past things are memories, they exist, but I was very fortunate to chat with the big wave surfer, Laird Hamilton. You'll appreciate this. He goes, don't allow your memories to be bigger than your dreams.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Like you always want something to look forward to. And I think that's huge for the human experience. It's like, okay, these things happened, but I don't want to be like, oh yeah, back in the day, I don't want to be that guy or that girl. It's like, no, like those things are part of my story. And now I'm moving on to something better. I'd like to take a moment to thank our friends over at Vuori. They are bringing a new perspective on performance apparel. Their products are incredibly versatile and allow for freedom and flexibility in any arena. As humans, we are complex creatures, always on the move and always on the go. Allow Vuori to join you as you navigate the complexities of the human experience. Whether you are training, adventuring, lounging, traveling, or attending meetings, Vuori has options to suit your active lifestyle. My personal favorites are the men's core short and their line of Ponto performance products, which are so incredibly soft. Check these guys out over at vuori.com/Invictus Mindset for 20% off your very first purchase and free shipping. That's VUORI.com/Invictus Mindset for 20% off your very first purchase and free shipping. Everything they have is designed to work out in, but doesn't look or feel like it. It's so freaking comfortable that you won't want to wear anything else. Breathing, movement, circulation, digestion. What do all these body functions have in common? Our muscles. There are over 600 muscles in the human body that are responsible for supporting our daily activities. That's why your muscle health is incredibly important. On this podcast, I always discuss seeking our peak expression and striving to maximize our human potential. And so I try to share with you the top products that I find on the market. My H&B is a clinically proven ingredient that has been shown to help build and maintain lean muscle mass, increase strength, improve recovery, and enhance body composition. Learn more about your muscle health at myhmb.com/Invictus. Once again, that's myhmb.com/Invictus. Enhance your muscle health and enhance your life. After your college experience doing so well in pole vault and navigating the 400, how did you ultimately find CrossFit?
I think it was my sophomore year in college. So I was actually introduced to it in high school. My PE coach was a CrossFit coach. And so he had us do
cool.
Not CrossFit, but like we do Murph. I remember like my whole PE class, we would do like Murph. So that was, I feel like, probably the first CrossFit workout I ever did. And he'd have us do like squat Tabatas and stuff like that. And I remember during the summer, he was like, just come in, like come try it. And so I would go try it. And I'm still like super good friends with the owners of that box in Tri-Cities, Washington. So I like dabbled in it a little bit, but I was always pulled back to sports. And so then when I got to college and I was mainly only a pole vaulter, right? Like I was like, this isn't enough. Like I was like, okay, like I'm like occasionally doing the 400, but going from so much like working out in high school to like not as much, I was like, I feel so lazy, like freshman 15. And so I was like, I need something else. And I reached out to a CrossFit gym, like this guy that I saw, and he like did CrossFit. And I was like, hey, like, can I come to your gym and like drop in? And I went and like tried it. And I remember I did a workout and they were like, oh, who's this girl? And they were like, she should be a part of like, they had like a little competitors group. And so they were like, you should come train with us. And so I did as much as I could. I would do it like after track practice, and like I would go to like weights and then go to practice and then go to CrossFit at like 7 p.m. But I wanted to do it so bad. And luckily I was good enough at pole vault that the coaches couldn't really say anything, because totally, I mean, in any collegiate sport, a scholarship athlete that's doing something outside of their sport was a no-no. And luckily I remember like the head coach called me in one time and he's like, we could sit here and talk about your extracurricular activities, but because like I had like the school record and stuff, I was able to get away with it. But yeah, I found it in college, and it almost sucked that I found it in college because I loved it more than pole vault. Like I wasn't super passionate about pole vault. I thought pole vault was very boring because it's such a monotonous sport. I mean, it's really just like drilling over and over and over, just probably what I think weightlifting would be. And so CrossFit always like kind of tugged me away from pole vault. So when I finally graduated, I was so stoked. But then they got rid of regionals that year. When I finally graduated, they got rid of regionals. And I was like, cool, I can't even go to regionals. Now I have to make the games through the open.
Yep. Open. And then that sanctional model that was...
Yeah.
It was really interesting. Did you take part in the sanctionals at all? Did you travel around?
Yeah, I did. I only did the Mayhem one. So I did Mayhem Classic.
You did really well, didn't you?
Yeah, I got third behind Christy and Tia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
And that was how I think I want to say that's how I qualified. Because 2019, I qualified through the Open. And then 2020 was, didn't they cancel something? They kind of did like the games online-ish, if I remember correctly. Yeah, but before that, they canceled a whole bunch of sanctionals. Yeah, so I was like super lucky that I made it because the Mayhem Classic was in like January or February. So it was really early. I think they closed everything down in like March because we were getting ready to do West Coast when it was going to be out here in San Diego. And then they moved it to Vegas the following year. Yeah, I do remember that. It's so crazy. Like that, all that time just feels like a blink and it was gone. With that being said, CrossFit went through a lot of changes. We had the Greg Glassman comments, the Black Lives Matter movement, the changes with Dave Castro, the shifts in ownership over to Eric Rosa. Most recently, brought over Adrian Bosman to kind of lead program design. What was going through your brain when you were like, okay, I'm putting my eggs in this CrossFit basket. I think I can make this a career, but now I don't know if it's even going to be a thing. Like, how did you navigate that, like, in between your ears? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I was so lucky to have Jason and Cooper in my corner because I was still very much like a rookie, and like CrossFit I was trying to make it my life, but it wasn't necessarily my life yet. Like I was still working another job. And so in 2020, when we were having all these athlete calls about like, what are we going to do? And athletes started talking about like not going to the games. And I was like, I want to go. And I luckily had Cooper to like kind of help give me like information. And it's funny, like earlier you said I like to ask the hard questions. And I totally was like, I get that I'm like kind of a rookie, but I remember with O'Keefe, I was like, Cooper, like, what should I be asking? And he'd like give me questions, and I'd like ask O'Keefe on like this like Zoom call with all of these other athletes. And I'm like, just asking these tough questions that nobody else was asking. And I remember I was like, oh my gosh, O'Keefe probably hates me. And I like love O'Keefe now, but totally was like just trying to ask all the questions because I just didn't know. Like nobody was really saying anything. And I wanted to know like what I should do, who I should like follow almost. I really did believe in CrossFit and I loved it. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of people were lost and didn't know what to do. And so I think it was really easy for people to follow where everyone else was going. And I just wasn't willing to do that.
A closed mouth doesn't get fed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like everyone was like going this way. And I feel like I was kind of going this way, but I was the only one willing to kind of speak up about it. So it was a really weird place to be because I also was like a rookie and like everybody was like, who the fuck is this girl?
That's cool to hear that though. Matt O'Keefe is such a great guy. Like he's done so much for the sport, especially behind the scenes. And I mean, Wadapalooza is always super freaking cool. And I've been fortunate to cross paths with him a little bit. And man, he said something that I loved. He goes, just do the next right thing. And I was like, whoa. Is that going to be my next tattoo? Like, that's so good.
He's such a stud. That's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
That's really cool.
And so your career just continues to evolve and develop. And, you had tremendous success most recently at the games, a 4th place finish. That's your best so far. When I say that out loud, how does that make you feel?
It's solid. Like, I'm just like, that's a solid placing. It's a weird feeling when, it is amazing. But being an athlete your whole life, I feel like it's always been like, okay, I did this, but it wasn't the best. So like, what's next? Like, I can still do better. So, and it does feel good after everything. And like, I did make huge improvements, but I know there's still so much left. And so I can't help but kind of focus on that.
Yeah, for sure. The curiosity brews for sure.
Yeah.
And I briefly mentioned Adrian Bosman, in charge of program design. The games were definitely had a little bit of a different flavor this year, which was super cool.
Yeah.
What did you think of the program design at the games and how it tested athletes this year?
So I love it. And I obviously didn't like some things. I like it because I typically tend to thrive in those events that he put out where it's like a legless pegboard. I remember like Torres would be like, if there's anyone that can figure this out, Danielle, like it's you. And I was like, yeah, like I'm an athlete. Like I tend to be a little more athletic. So I kind of like those things because usually I can figure them out. But then like things I don't like, the wall facing handstand push-up, because it's so frustrating as an athlete having this skill where I'm like, why can't I get it? Like we were in the warm-up area and I'm like, why can't I do it? Like, what do I need to do to figure it out? And it's one of those movements where, unfortunately, I don't think it really rewarded like good movement. So, I mean, that's like the only, I feel like, movement that I didn't really care for because
it's such a great point because being a gymnast, you're used to being pretty stacked.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the wall facing is you almost have to like press your hips against the wall and arch a little bit. So you're using a little bit more pec minor to press through. So it's literally like an incline bench press.
Exactly. And so being an athlete, I was like, and I'm not like just like a brute. Like I feel like a lot of the girls that did well with it, they're just like brute athletes who have like, that insane
ton of
like,
strength,
chest muscles and chest strength. And so for me, I was like, why can't I figure this out? Like, this is so frustrating as an athlete because again, it wasn't really rewarding good movement. And so I was like, I could do this with perfect movement, but it's not the way to do it. And so that was a little frustrating, especially to be put on my hands. And I was like, we thought I would be good at it. I was like, I'm going to be so good at these. And then like we go in the warm-up area and I fail the first one. And I was like, I am not going to be good at these. So
it's such a humbling experience, but now it's something that you can add into your training. And I'm sure this time next year, you're going to have that tool in your toolbox for sure.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about the traversing on the parallel bars and, playing around with some stationary dips? We've seen ring dips before, but haven't really seen that. What was that experience like doing something a little bit different? I know Boz talked about like everybody's great on their hands.
Right.
And so being able to see the traversing in that regard was kind of innovative and cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed that event. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, you were a gymnast, like you'll be good at this. And I'm like, actually, we didn't have that event, but we did as gymnasts, we would they would be in our little waiting area and we'd play on them. So I kind of knew a little bit how they would feel. But I was excited again, because I feel like it was one of those workouts where it's like, you just had to adapt and be an athlete and figure it out. And which is what I think I did really well. And I ended up placing pretty good in that event. So I liked it, but only probably because I did well.
That's super cool. I'm great friends with the founder of RX Smart Gear, and I had him on maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the games. And we talked about skill progression of single unders, double unders, potentially triple unders. And then we talked about the double under cross. And I said on the episode, athletes, you've heard it here first. The double under cross could be coming.
Oh,
and I didn't think it would be in this games. And then all of a sudden it was. What were your thoughts on that one? Obviously, everybody saw the meme that went viral. What was that experience like for you, kind of attacking those things?
So it's funny, I want to say maybe around then, Cooper texted me and Dallin and was like, hey guys, he sent a video of Laura. I think RX Smart Gear posted a video of Laura doing the crossovers super well. And he was like, hey guys, you need to start practicing these. And then we were like, okay, yeah, we do, whatever. And then that video was taken down. I think Laura had them take it down because she was so good at them. But and then when I got to Naples, Dallin had the rope, and I they were supposed to send me a rope, but I just was moving everywhere, so it didn't get to me. And I was trying to practice with Dallin's, and it was so hard. We were I was like, I can't do these. What the heck? And then when they came out, I was like, Matt, I've tried these. I can't do them. And he's like, we'll figure it out. He's so calm. He's like, don't worry. He's like, one thing at a time, right? Can you do single unders? But that was something that really impressed me with Matt during the games, was how he took me through this progression of single unders, double unders, and taught me the crossover, which I'm sure he knew just as much about the freaking crossover double under as me. He just looked at YouTube videos and figured it out, and then was able to coach me in a way where I did it in the warm up, and I was like, we just did it. I was like, we just got one. And so, yeah, it was really cool. It was another one of those things where you kind of just had to be an athlete, but also I think I had a really good coach to help me get that, because I don't think I would.
It sounds like that calm demeanor really serves you really well, especially on game day.
Oh yeah. When somebody's calm around you, it's hard not to be calm. Just when you're arguing with somebody, if they're arguing back and matching your energy, no wonder it's going to get even crazier. I've learned that a lot, even through relationships. Don't match bad energy with bad energy, because you're just going to get more bad energy. And that's how it goes with coaching and athletes too.
Sounds like you found some good energy out there in Naples. And Matt's navigated a lot this year too. When I spoke to him, it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks after you had joined. And it may have been a week and a half since the announcement of Phil Toon's, PED positive test, which I'm sure was heavy on him and the whole crew out there. What was it like arriving at a little bit of a controversial time? And how did Matt Torres, stay so calm through it all?
That's a good question. So much respect for him, because I remember when I did want to come down, I think him and Cooper were more in conversation about it. But I do remember calling him because there was so much drama around the underdogs and me leaving situation, much more than there needed to be. And I remember calling him and I was like, hey, like, I hope you feel no obligation to like take me in, because, you know, unfortunately with like the training camp thing and social media, there is this new added layer of drama and social media and what it does to people's image, right? And so I was like, well, I don't want to like bring my drama onto like this Naples camp, you know, and make Dallin feel any type of way through social media because of the shit he might get for me coming. You know what I mean? Like I was like very aware of that. And so I just wanted to make sure. And I was like, and I never thought that he would be the kind of guy to like just take me on because he felt like he had to. But we had that conversation and, you know, I think there was like a respect there. And he was like, you know, I just like want to coach you as an athlete, like clean slate. Like I don't necessarily care what happened over there. I just want to coach you and I'm willing to help you. And I don't know. He's just, yeah, he was very calm, and even he just has a very like logical approach and like can see both sides. And yeah, I don't know how he stays so calm, honestly.
It's impressive. I mean, he's got a great head on his shoulders. It was fun, you know, picking his brain a little bit. Something that stands out, and I forgot who said this. I'm stealing it from somebody way smarter than me. But it's the phrasing API, assume positive intent. And it's like, in my humble opinion, everybody's a 10 out of 10 when you first meet them. I don't want to take their baggage into consideration. I'll let that go. You get the clean slate as he described to you. And it's like, all right, like This is a new chapter. We've turned that page. Let's try to make the best of where we are now in that present moment. And, you know, I can't help but throw out, I say this on like every episode, but like be where your feet are.
Yeah.
My feet aren't over there anymore. They're here now. And let's have the appropriate conversations where you can thrive, Dallin can thrive, James Sprague can thrive, Emma Carey can thrive, Fee Sagafi can thrive, Phil Toon can thrive, and Matt Torres and the Brute crew can thrive. And yeah, the drama in CrossFit is always looming, you know, between all, I feel like everybody, you know, has a podcast now and everybody's putting out like, what buttons can I press so that this gets a headline? Because attention seems to be the name of the game, but I don't know. I prefer the authentic and the real raw conversations that, you know, fortunately we're able to kind of have in this platform, which is super rad. And, you know, you've described having a ton of fun in Naples. It's being the right fit. We briefly discussed some program design. What's it been like training with Dallin and James Sprague?
Oh my gosh. So I've mainly gotten to train with Dallin. So I haven't really got to train with James at all. But oh my gosh, training with Dallin it's so fun. And I feel like it's what I've been wanting for so long. And Dallin's just like, he's just young. And so it's kind of cool to be like this like older athlete around him, and hopefully push him in his training. And I don't know, we mesh super well, fitness wise and personality wise. I think he also brings like this level of calmness and seriousness that, like, you know, like, not to say that I'm not focused and I'm like, you know, not always there, but like he like kind of brings me down and like mellows it out too, which is really cool, you know? So it's like him and Torres.
It's a good yin to the yang.
Yeah, it really is, you know? But then like I do have like feistiness sometimes that like, you know, maybe like fires him up and like gets him going, which is cool. You know, like we have like this competitiveness, which I think is like, it's cool because I think the longer we'll train together, like the more and more we'll feel that. And like, it's really cool. It's fun to feel that competitiveness again in the gym, but not in a toxic way.
Mm-hmm. He crossed paths with me briefly. I think he was here for, I don't know, a few days on a weekend or something. And I got to see him briefly, and he definitely is a little bit of an old soul. He never gets too high. He never gets too low. He's just kind of even keel, gets after it, does what he needs to do. But with that being said, who gets to choose the music in your training sessions? Like, what does that look like?
Actually, it's pretty well balanced. Like,
okay.
But actually, who knows? Because I remember, like, I was like, they're probably only letting me choose the music now because I'm new and like they're being nice. So we'll really see when I go back and see who really gets to choose all the time. But it's a pretty good blend. Dallin also likes country, but I don't think he gets like too hyped to it, but he put up with it for a little bit. So
Is that your go-to country music for Metcons too, or just the lifting and kind of skill work?
Usually go-to is like, country. And now blends of like, I don't know, I feel like chill alternative. If it's rap, it's more like Mac Miller style. But like nothing like, I don't know, nothing crazy. Pretty chill. I like it chill.
We have so many personalities out here. So it's like, we almost had I remember back in the day, like we used to have to sign, okay, today's your day. And like it was like a different flavor every day. And I was like, I don't want to play anymore. Like just make sure something's
like,
playing.
This is too much stress.
For sure.
What is your go-to?
You know, like I have that basketball background. So when I'm lifting, it's like something like a 50 Cent or something. You know, the crew really likes like Drake and that kind of stuff. I'm not huge into that.
Yeah.
And then honestly, when it comes to a Metcon, I don't really care that much. I would prefer a little bit more of like a mellow, like a Kygo type thing.
Yeah.
Because some of the other stuff makes my heart race, man. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, my heart is already going to explode during this open workout. Yeah. Like, I don't need this, really aggressive music right now.
Yeah, like Migos, I hate doing Metcons to them because it's just like this repetitive like high the whole time. And I'm like, okay, like my brain is like done. This is too much. But I totally get that, like the mellow.
Miko Salo, he's one of those OG CrossFitters, rogue athlete. I think he was a CrossFit champion back in the day as well.
I think so, yeah.
He has this famous line, like, if you need music to work out, you need to find a new hobby. And I can't help but like think of Matt Frazier there just because like when I had Matt on the podcast, I'm like, oh, he's freaking awesome. Like he and I got to storytell and have some amazing conversations. But my perception originally was like him in the basement doing his rowing intervals like by himself.
Dead silent.
Like when you went up to HWPO, like what was the ambiance and the vibe kind of like in their gym there in Vermont?
You know, it's funny. I like totally can't even remember music. Oh, you know what? We played country for one of the Metcons.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That's probably because Jake Marconi was there.
It was actually, I think it was Jason.
Oh, nice.
He wanted it. I think. I can't remember if they asked me or if it was Jason who put it on. He was on a big Luke Combs kick and I was down. Nice. It was good. I feel like we all knew why we were there and we were just like there to get some really good training and try to get a little more fit. It was cool. And we would, I think we would be a little more serious before the workout, but then like after we were able to kind of like relax and, laugh and joke. And it was a really good blend of people that like, I don't know, maybe necessarily outside looking in, you would be like, ooh, are they like all going to get along? But I think we all did really well. And so it was really cool. And I love Mel. Even after, it's funny, my mom was like, oh, it was so like nice to see you after the events, like talking to Mal. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I think Mal is like, she's a young girl, but she's like so mature. It's insane.
Totally. It's so interesting how, people want to put like different CrossFit Games athletes against each other. And it just kind of cracks me up a little bit because you used to see that a little bit, especially in like the NBA, like, people not hanging out. And now you look at it and like a lot of the NBA players actually train together in the off season. And sometimes they take trips together, build cool memories together. And it's just interesting how the dynamic in sport has changed with regards to athlete relationships.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like there's a time and place for it. And that's not to say like there's some girls where I'm like, I don't vibe with, and that's fine. Like that's life. I don't vibe with everyone. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. But I do like enjoy spending my time around some of the athletes. And I think some people would be surprised, like, at who's friends and whatnot. So
yeah, totally. When you were at HWPO, you mentioned something, I think it was on the Brute Strength podcast, where you talked about, it's not always about your fitness. Sometimes it's about gentle technicalities, being able to implement those in the midst of high intensity fitness. And you referenced like a D-ball move that you previously didn't have in your toolbox. How is that kind of perspective opened your eyes a little bit around like, okay, I can be one of the fittest women on the planet, but if I don't have this skill or understanding of the rhythm of technique, I'm still not going to end up on the podium, which is where I want to be.
Yeah, that is like huge. And I think that's one thing that I've learned a lot from Torres and Dom.
Who's Dom?
He's like the assistant coach. I don't really know what I would call his role, but he had my coach's pass, and he coached me a lot at the CrossFit Games as well. So
Very cool.
It was cool to have them both, because one would like get us started on like a warm up, and and then he'd be in the back with me. So yeah, he's another coach there. He's really good with like weightlifting, like amazing with weightlifting. I mean, immediately when I got there, fixed a couple things that I like didn't even know. I was like, how did you see that?
The lenses that some of these coaches have is just, it's amazing how they can see certain things. And
it's crazy.
You know, even in the few times where, you know, I've been humbly in the warm-up area and I hear coaches say certain things, I'm like, man, that's really cool. Like we all can learn so much from each other. It's really rad to see. Oh
yeah. I mean, but with Torres, like I would not have placed as high as I did at the games this year if it wasn't for the Brute team. Because like I'm super fit, and Torres says it too. He says it's not always the most fit person that wins. It's the person with the best strategy. You know, we talked about some of the workouts, like the traverse one, the clean parallel one. I think if you watch it, I kind of came from behind. Like even like listening when I was competing, I wasn't hearing my name. And I was like, I think I'm like creeping to the front. Like, I think I'm like, you know, top 5, whatever. But it came down to strategy. And like, we had a strategy and game plan that like paid off. And that was true for a lot of the other workouts, even the lunge, ring, handstand, push-up one. I wasn't necessarily in the front, but it was being able to do that last lunge almost unbroken. It slid out of my arms, but almost unbroken. That caught me up a lot. And, you know, stuff like that, like that I've learned so much. And Torres and Dom are so good at it. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch them hear a workout and then like take their athlete and like come up with this plan. It's like unreal. I didn't know like that level of coaching is out there, and they're just so smart at what they do.
That's really cool. Understanding time domains and being able to specifically kind of provide the appropriate recipe to the given athlete is a very special tool to have in the toolbox. When you reflect on your games experience, did you like competing at North Park better or inside the Coliseum better?
Ooh, is North Park just the field?
Yeah.
I feel like I really like being on North Park, which is weird. Yeah. Everybody loves the Coliseum, but I really enjoy being on North Park. I feel like it's just because we're like outside, and it just feels so much larger, other than it being really hot. But
yeah, I was going to say, how did you handle the heat out there? Were you, obviously dry heat in Vegas, sweaty, humid heat in Florida. Yeah. It sounds like you were relatively prepared for it.
Yeah. I feel like for the most part, I was prepared. It's funny, like, I don't know, Madison, I don't know if it's like nerves, but I also have asthma, and I feel like my like lungs and breathing is always terrible in Madison. I don't know what, but it's always like, it takes like the first day to like get back to like normal. But but the heat, the shuttle to overhead one.
Yeah.
That one, I remember I was like, ooh, I'll do really good at this one, because I really enjoyed like those, the running lengths and like the shoulder to overhead, obviously. But I was so hot that like my legs just like were giving me nothing. So I was a little sad that I couldn't, I didn't feel like I was running to like my full potential. Like, I feel like I couldn't really do it because I was so hot. But then it was good, because for the next workouts on North Park, I was like, okay, like when I go out there, I need to like cool down and like douse myself in ice and water. And that helped so much, because I went out to that shuttle overhead just feeling hot. Like, I remember finishing and I was like, I was too hot going onto the field. And so it was like, I'm glad I could like learn that then and like take that away with me, because for the next events I was like, had a towel and, you know.
For sure. You had the preparation, which is something that I feel like people don't recognize sometimes. They'll be like, oh, I saw Danielle Brandon's, time on that workout. I did it in the gym where I could use the restroom whenever I wanted to. I could set up my bar on my sexy, spot. And, I'm in an air conditioned gym. Like, people sometimes forget some of the variables that get tossed into competition. It's really fascinating to me. But you then had another kind of shuttle run-ish kind of workout where you guys sprinted out to perform wall balls.
Oh, yeah.
And then the dumbbell squat snatches. What'd you think about that workout? It was super fast, but then it was like interval style, which was kind of unique. I'd never really seen that at the games before.
Yeah, I really liked it. And it was cool because I think we were all just like, well, at least this one won't really hurt. It just kind of comes down to like execution. I liked it. I almost wished, because I am like a little taller. So I was like, ooh, okay, I do have to like think about moving a little quicker than like, Mal. But I almost wish the wall ball was a little higher because I don't think it was like high enough to really like make a huge difference. But I really liked that one. And it was cool because by the third round, I think girls got more tired. And I think that was like one of my best rounds. So
Nice.
it was just fun. It was fun to be an athlete and like, make a little mistake, but then have a chance to correct it on the next one. It was just fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun.
That's a good observation. The single arm dumbbell squat snatch is typically really hard for some of the taller athletes out there. Yeah. Do you have any mobility secrets that help optimize your movement for something like that?
I wish. Like, I mean, I think just being a gymnast, like my overhead mobility. I mean, I have some good stretches I could put out there, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the shoulder and upper back mobility.
It was cool to see. I mean, Guy from Brazil, like he was so fast at those things. I had like a side panorama view. I was like, dude, like you are super fast right now. It was cool to watch.
He moves so well.
Yeah, he's a stud. And it was cool to see his engagement right at the end of the games with his girlfriend. That was cool.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I was like, what is going on? Yeah, that was crazy.
I know. Oh. The games come packed with so many peaks and valleys of emotions. It's cool as the dust settles to kind of, rewatch it. We kind of watched it over here on the YouTube feed to kind of like re-experience it from a different lens, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Something I'm kind of curious about, Danielle. There's so many training camps out there. You've got Comp Train, you've got Invictus, you've got Training Think Tank, you've got, Underdogs. You've got so many different ones out there. How does Naples and the Brute Strength crew structure it where, not everybody's training at the same time, right? A lot of these other places, argue, if you have everybody training at the same time, a really good athlete will raise all tides. But you guys structure it more of an individual style perspective, and maybe it's some gentle pairing, which I can't help but relate that to like individuals in basketball in the off season where you've got 2 to 3 people kind of training grouped at a time. How do you guys structure that with regards to gym allocation around, class structures and what works for, it sounds like you and Dallin train together, maybe Emma and Phil Toon train together. Like, how do you guys structure that?
So I think that's something that will be talked about for when we all kind of get back. But yeah, I think now that like, it's funny, like now I'm in the mix. So, and like, it's funny, I was like very unplanned to be brought in, but here I am. And yeah, I think I don't know. There's like a good question for Torres, how he views it. But I think because me and Dallin, it works like male, female. It's just like a good pairing. And we trained together before the game, so it really worked. And I think a lot of like our weaknesses and strengths go really well together. But yeah, I think I don't know, like for this next coming season, I don't really know what the plan is. I hope to be able to train with Dallin, but I think also too in the beginning, it'll probably be a little more lenient, I'm assuming. And then it will get a lot more specific and structured as the season gets more serious. But yeah, I really enjoy it. And I think that is true with I think one athlete can bring a lot of other athletes up, which is what, like, I don't know, not to like toot my own horn, but I really think that I did that at Underdogs and with Alex. And it even got to the point where some workouts I would just like demolish. And I feel like it almost was like, now we're not really programming to me. We're just programming to everybody else, which is what I really like with Brute is like, it's like super catered to me. So I think I think Brute does a really good job with that because it is so specific and they don't take away from the individual aspect of it. Like, yeah, it's a training camp, which is cool. It's the new thing, but we're also individual athletes at the end of the day. Like we're a team, but we're not a team.
For sure. And that's definitely what we're seeing in the business of fitness too, right? Like there's a lot going on behind the scenes. We hinted at it briefly before, but I mean, Danielle, you're working with a lot of different brands now. You've got Rad Global, which is super cool. Monster Energy, the Toe Spacers, Airwave. You're working with the WODproof app. You've got True Grit. I'm good friends with Matt Piva and that crew. Escape Sounds. You've got Grip Tight Tape, and then you've got X Endurance with Jason and Cooper. Like, how do you manage all of that? Is that where Cooper's role kind of comes in? And what's the expectation on your end? Is it just go be Danielle Brandon, or do you have to make content at a certain rhyme and rhythm? Like, what's that kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So Cooper does a really good job because it is a lot to manage. And, especially like when we're in season, sometimes it can be really overwhelming to be flooded with like, hey, Danielle, can you do this? Can you do this? And Cooper does a really good job at like, filtering through it all and then like giving me what I need at like certain times. Right. Like, and I think also too, I'm really lucky with the sponsors that I do work with. They understand that we do this for a living, and they understand, social media, and like, I don't know, they just like, I'm really lucky to work with them because they're really good at knowing my lifestyle, knowing what I do, and not overwhelming me. But yeah, I still do have those obligations, and I have obligations to make content on a monthly basis. But it also just makes it easy because I really do use the stuff, and it's the side of CrossFit and the side of this lifestyle that I've kind of had to accept, like as much as, I would love to only work out, but like, that's not only going to pay the bills. So, it is the work that I have to do, but I also do enjoy it. And Cooper and Jason do a really good job at managing that side for me.
Yeah, for sure. What was the entry point for you in creating trust and buy-in with those guys? Because I feel like every year after the games, you have some of those athletes that were kind of right on the cusp that kind of got over the hump, whether that's notoriety, performance, social media followers. And then they're kind of like, okay, like how do I, decide what I want to do here? What was a defining moment for you where you're like, okay, I need to delegate some of these things and get organized through a third party so that they can help create some structure in this messiness of business?
So I feel like mine and Cooper and Jason's relationship has been a little more unique because I did sign with them in, I think, like 2019 after the games, or shortly like the beginning of 2020, I forget. But, I had a couple sponsors and it was super small. I wasn't huge, but I got a little bit of attention from 2019 and like that event win. But then 2020, I actually got dropped by some sponsors because of COVID. And I really still wasn't, I don't know, I guess you could say as successful with CrossFit sponsorships because of COVID and the 2020 online games. I was lucky to even be on the demo team because that got me some exposure and got me some social media following. But it was kind of a roller coaster. I was not making money in CrossFit. And then really I picked it up in 2021. And so I was lucky to already have Cooper and Jason on my side because they easily could have let me go after 2019 and 2020 because I don't know, I don't think we had a ton of sponsorships at the time. And I had a little bit of a following, but yeah, 2021 is where things really picked up, and it was this easy process, right? I had some, but not a lot. And then it really just slowly kind of started to pick up.
Yeah, for sure. It's been cool to see your success so far. And, I can't help but note the relationship with Monster. I've connected a little bit with Hans. He's come
cool.
down. I actually judged his, I don't remember which open workout one.
Was it the deadlift burpee
It was
one?
the deadlift burpee. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was like,
funny.
I had this neck surgery a few months ago, and he had come in a few times, and Danielle, he was like, yeah, I had this fusion on my neck, and then he goes over and pulls 500 pounds. He's like, hey, can I use your belt? You're a big guy. I think we wear the same size belt. And I'm like, yeah, man, nice to meet you. I don't think deadlifting 500 pounds is great for your neck, but then I got to know his story and the fighting and the knife throwing, and I'm like, this dude's a stud.
He's
And he came
wild.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super wild. And he wanted to do that deadlift workout, but he is responsible for kind of bringing Monster into the CrossFit space, at least from my humble understanding. And you work with those guys. And that was another, controversial thing in the beginning, right? Like, oh, CrossFit is for health and wellness, but it's also sport. And, we're trying to professionalize it from a business standpoint. But then there was this whole debate, not to mention that I think the first sponsor of the CrossFit Games was Panda Express.
Oh my gosh, no way.
I believe that's true. I could be wrong, but I think
What?
I've heard some of the OGs talk about that before. And you look at the NBA, they've got like McDonald's and Sprite and all these different things. What are your thoughts on how the sport is growing, and how does it become professionalized, like maybe the X Games or the World Surf League?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a start, definitely, right? Like, as much as people don't want to accept it, like, money is a huge part of, like, making CrossFit a little more successful. And if Monster can help in that way, like, I think it's awesome. And I think if Monster can help more athletes make a living and make the sport more professional, like, I'm grateful to them, like, that's awesome. And it's easy for people to sit back and kind of hate on it and be like, oh, well, it's not healthy. And I'm like, oh, you live a perfect life. Like, you've never had I don't know. Like, it's just funny. It's so easy for people to hate, but I do think it's important for the sport to grow. And yeah, and I think it's like everybody starts somewhere, and CrossFit has to start somewhere. And if that's with Monster, so be it.
It's pushing the boundaries with some of the uncomfortable conversations to try to enhance the monetization of the sport.
Exactly.
And it may be right, it may be wrong, but I think it's the attempt to try to grow the sport in the right direction, to give amazing athletes like yourself an opportunity to do it for a living.
Exactly.
And the more you can do that, the more you can focus on training and development. And then all of a sudden we see things continue to evolve and develop at the CrossFit Games level, which, man, every year people are getting fitter, faster, stronger, and doing some incredible human tricks. And as a spectator on this side of things, it is really, really amazing to watch you guys do what you do.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
What's to come next for Danielle Brandon? What are you kind of looking at this off season? And what are you kind of excited about at the moment?
So I have some fun things with RAD that I don't know, like, if I can talk about, but yeah, I have a cool event with RAD in October. And then I think I'm looking to do Rogue and possibly go to Bali for a trip. So,
oh, very cool.
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm looking forward to moving out of Vegas. So I'm moving by the end of this month to Naples. And so I'll officially be there. Yeah. Yeah.
I heard the community there in Naples is like a little bit older. I think you mentioned between like 45 and like 65. And so when you go to the dog park, you stand out like a sore thumb.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's a little slower, which is fine. I think like Miami isn't too far. It's like 2 hours, maybe less. And you can't beat the beach. Like, I love the beach. And, I'm excited to kind of get back to having my favorite coffee shop and go to the beach and go to the dog park. Like, I love those little things. And Vegas doesn't really have that for me. So I'm excited to have that again.
Little bit less distraction.
Yes, exactly.
Vegas is cool, but it's got a lot going on for sure.
Yeah, just spaced out city.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to see your continual development. I'm so thankful that we got to cross paths today.
Yeah.
After just hearing so much about you and watching you continue to grow and evolve in the sport. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your authenticity today.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Where can people find you, Danielle?
Instagram, Danielle Brandon 7.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing some of the cool content and, you walking on your hands at really high speeds.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, and I look forward to crossing paths with you soon. For those of you observing on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple, please, if you enjoyed my conversation with Danielle, rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Thanks, guys. Are you over 35 and in need of a solid training program? Are you looking to improve your athleticism and keep up with the younger athletes in your CrossFit gym? Then look no further than our Invictus Masters program. This program places year-round emphasis on mobility and stability exercises with movements that we have seen directly benefit our Masters athletes. Our program is led by Nicole DeHart and offers a training program designed specifically for Masters athletes who are looking to compete at a higher level in the sport of CrossFit. Some of our top Masters athletes in the world train with us, including CrossFit Games champion Kevin Kester, Matt Beals, and Pat Sprague. You can learn more about their stories and the Invictus Masters program by checking out their episodes right here on the Invictus Mindset Podcast. If you'd like more information about the current training cycle or to join the Invictus Masters program, please email Nicole at invictusathlete.com. That's NICHOLE at invictusathlete.com. Breathing, movement, circulation, digestion. What do all these body functions have in common? Our muscles. There are over 600 muscles in the human body that are responsible for supporting our daily activities. That's why your muscle health is incredibly important. On this podcast, I always discuss seeking our peak expression and striving to maximize our human potential. And so I try to share with you the top products that I find on the market. My H&B is a clinically proven ingredient that has been shown to help build and maintain lean muscle mass, increase strength, improve recovery, and enhance body composition. Learn more about your muscle health at myhmb.com/Invictus. Once again, that's myhmb.com/Invictus. Enhance your muscle health and enhance your life.